Mayor Thomas, while the Pledge of Allegiance.
As always, it's our prayer when we approach the business of this borough, that we would use the ultimate wisdom, balance, and objectivity in all matters. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Gary?
Present.
Counselor Kirkland?
Here.
Counselor Culp?
Here.
Counselor Miller? Here. Counselor Pottstown?
Here.
President Trainee?
Here.
Counselor Wynn?
Here.
Mayor Thomas? Here. There is a quorum.
Do we have a motion to accept our minutes from the last meeting? So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have one add-on. This will be letter V. And this is a resolution by the Mayor and Town Council for the authorization of the supplemental reimbursement agreement for final design phase for the Pottstown area closed loop system. So this is our next phase. And they wanted this done before our December meeting, so Chuck will bring up you to speed when we get to that. So that'll be at letter B. Okay, comments from citizens present? Joyce York.
You're still here?
Yes. Please be reminded, there looks like there's fairly many people that are signed up to speak. You have a 3-minute time limit addressed to council, and we can get an answer for you today. We will certainly get back to you with that. Thank you.
My name is Joyce Ewart, and I've been a landlord for 25 years and have 14 units here in Pottstown. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to let me speak, which I am not a good speaker, but I feel that I am a very good landlord. I love my properties and have an excellent rapport with my tenants. I heard there is a new ordinance going into effect, a yearly inspection cost of $80 per unit. We as landlords cannot keep absorbing these costs. Why are rental units inspected and not resident properties? We all pay the same taxes. I think if a tenant had a complaint about their living conditions, they would call the borough. I don't know of any other town that has yearly inspections, and these costs will up our rents and our tenants, which I really don't think you know just how some of these people are living. It's hard for them to keep their families even warm in the winter. Year after year, the leaders of this town continue to implement ordinances which are biased against landlords. The large majority of landlords have safe rental homes, and the renters are happy with no complaints. The landlords are now organizing, and we plan on challenging any ordinances which our attorney feel are in any way biased against landlords or hurt tenants. We will also be requesting through the right to know process all financial information on how you plan to use the money received by this proposed new rental fee charged to the landlords, because I believe there's 5,200 homes in Pottstown that are renters. I'm not sure, I think it's 5,200. We also suggest the borough solicitor reviews ordinances currently on the books involving landlords and rental units. We do not want the borough of Pottstown to have to pay out $495,000 like the borough of Norristown just paid out. It's Briggs versus the borough of Norristown. This is a recent case where the landlord evicted a tenant because of an ordinance, disorderly behavior, which the borough of Norristown enacted. The tenant won $495,000. The borough of Pottstown has a similar ordinance. The point being that all ordinances are not legal and ordinances can be challenged and won. Assuming the borough does pass this $80 per year per unit, they need to inspect 5,200 units. How do they expect to do this in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
Katie Jackson.
Hi, I'm Katie Jackson. I wasn't planning to speak to the ordinance, but again, most of you know how I feel. I've been into a lot of these rental properties, and I understand what they consider to be good rental properties and what the reality is. So I applaud you for making reasonable changes to the ordinance. It's Saturday night around 11 o'clock. Gangland war broke out on my block. There were shootings, as in the Old West. People were hiding behind cars and shooting each other and blasting my neighbor's car. 4 bullets went into my neighbor's car. The fear and the absolute horror of being in the middle of a gangland shootout is something I really hope that you never have to experience. Okay. But if you do have to experience it, then I'd have to ask you, what are you going to do about this? We need your help. We need to work together. We can't continue to let Pottstown be eaten up by these beasts. They don't care about our community, and they're destroying us. Please do your best. Figure out what we can do to work together.
Thank you. Chief Drumheller, I'm going to give you the floor just to give us an update on what occurred Saturday evening.
Obviously, when violence breaks out in the borough, we all get very concerned, but gunplay specifically is very chilling. We have been working nonstop on this. We have had the detectives in all day. We're bringing them in, even though they have a holiday tomorrow, we're bringing them in tomorrow. We're going to work on this feverishly. One of the things that I can tell you is that we've identified a suspect. I know that your films have been viewed, and I appreciate the fact that you had a camera, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Happy to do so.
Thank you. Because one of the things that we're experiencing in this crime is sometimes people don't want to tell the police what actually happened. When you have it on film, it makes it a lot easier. And so I applaud you for that. Thank you. Most of all, I want to tell you that we're going to work as fast as we can to achieve this. I also want to let you know, Council, that at the beginning of the year, I'm restructuring the police department to give us more manpower on the street, and we're adding more people to the community response unit. So we're going to move some people off patrol, move them into an area where we can rapidly deploy people and get a better bang for our buck at this point. Other than that, that's pretty much where we are. I hesitate to tell you any more because it's an active investigation.
And we appreciate that.
And I fully expect this to resolve in an arrest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Angela Kearney.
Hello, everyone. Not trying to be redundant here, and actually this is a different incident that occurred Friday evening. This is my granddaughter Angela, and there was a shooting in Rowan Alley below her bedroom window on Friday evening. This little girl, her brother, and my daughter are my life. They are in fear. They are bound to a lease. They are afraid. They don't know what to do. My daughter is a minimum wage worker at the Pottstown Diner. She's worked there 5 years since she's 17 years old to support these two important people. It's getting scary. It's really getting scary. If you have a heart, please, for these children. She has night terrors since Friday evening and carries magic crystals in her pocket to keep her safe. Be her magic crystals, please. Be her magic crystals. This has to stop. It has to stop. Thank you.
City Clerk.
This is also about crime, and it's not a shooting, but last night, that I'm aware of, I just found out about this like 2 hours ago, there were 6 attempted break-ins within 2 blocks of my house. 2 I know that they got in the homes and were wandering and thieving on the first floor while people slept upstairs. And it is not just confined to one ward or one place. We are not safe no matter where we are. And I just want a plan. I mean, I applaud you, Chief Drumheller, I think that's great, but we want to partner with you. We want to be part of the solution. I don't want to hear somebody stand up here and you say, we don't want your help, we don't need your help. You need our help. We've got to stop it. So my question to you is, what else are you willing to do to keep the people in this community safe? Thank you.
Shana Williams.
Good evening, everyone. I've also come to challenge the annual inspections. So I'd like to read this that was prepared earlier. By implementing a yearly inspection with a fee attached to it, you are ultimately hurting the tenant. As we know, a large majority of the tenants in Pottstown are at or slightly over the poverty line. This means they do not have the extra income at the end of the month and no savings in the bank. Any extra charge, even $100, could seriously hurt their living situation. Unless I'm wrong, no one on council owns rental properties in Pottstown. This means you don't see the financial difficulties these tenants deal with on a daily basis. This will be the reality of the net effect of charging a yearly fee and a yearly rental inspection. First, many landlords will raise the rent. If the tenant can't afford the rent increase, they will be forced to move out at this cost, as this costs money. Secondly, when the code inspector finds non-safety issues with the home, meaning that there was damage that was caused by the tenant, who's going to pay for this? Of course, the landlord is not going to pay for the tenant's damage, and it will not come out of security deposit unless the tenant is moving out. Here is the scenario. So the tenant wants to stay. He creates a few $100s in damages and doesn't have the money to fix the damages to pass inspection. The landlord is forced to evict them. Now the tenant has to move, find a new place, or move in with a relative or a friend, or rely on social services. The moving costs money. The moving into a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 to 8 people is not safe. Pottstown social services are already beyond capacity. So ask yourselves, is this proposed ordinance going to benefit the tenants, or is it going to benefit the borough of Pottstown government, who can't find another way to produce revenue, so they ultimately put more financial hardship on the poor? Thank you.
Alex Butts.
Hello, I am here as well to oppose the new inspection policy that's going to be voted on, I believe, in December's meeting. As a landlord here, I'm aware that we have an inspection policy already that exists between tenants. So every time a unit of mine goes empty, which I own 16 of in town, every time a unit of mine goes empty, I have to get it inspected, bring it up to code, and before a tenant can move in. And for me to disrupt the tenant's life and have to schedule a yearly inspection and I've already talked to 80% of my tenants and asked them how they felt about it, and they would, quite frankly, would like me to come in when a repair needs to be done that they call me for, and don't want a yearly inspection. It's an invasion of their privacy, and the fact that when they rent that space off me, that's their home. Same as if I go out and buy a home and move in it. If you called me up and said, we're going to do a yearly inspection of the inside of your home to make sure it's safe, you do the same inspection when a house is sold, so before someone buys it. But once that person buys it and moves in, you never do another inspection again until that house is sold or rented. So why can't a tenant be offered that same privacy to their home that someone who bought their home is, whereas I own the house, it's my tenant's home, and for me to say, okay, now I have to let the borough in once a year to inspect your living conditions and make sure it's correct and make sure everything's up to par is not fair to them. It's also not fair to the landlord who, I have 16 units, so 16 times I'm gonna have to take off work and schedule to meet an inspector there and let them in. So that's gonna cost me money for an unnecessary thing, and I say unnecessary because it was inspected before the tenant moved in, and it'll be inspected when the tenant moves out, and inspected before the next one moves in. So there's an inspection program already in place that is working fine. So I don't think it's fair to disrupt the tenant's life. I don't think it's fair to the landlord to make them have to take off work 16 times in a row for different units. And then also at a cost at $80 a unit, that cost is gonna have to get passed on to the tenants because this is a business for me. So it has to turn a profit at the end of the day or it doesn't make any sense for me to do it. So, yeah, so it will increase the cost to the tenant. It will disrupt their privacy and their expectation of privacy in their home. And it doesn't, in all, it doesn't make any sense to me because there's already an inspection program set up for between tenants. And then if you do it for landlords, then you in turn, and if you say you're doing it because you want the tenants' inhabitants to be safe, then you also have to want a homeowner's inhabitants to be safe and inspect their places every year to make sure that they're living up to code. So it's the same thing, whether they rent their home or they buy their home. They have an expectation to privacy in their home, and coming in and inspecting it every year, but not inspecting somebody who bought their home is completely out of line. And also, just the fact that you're gonna cost landlords a lot of money, and they're going to have to up cost. And to be honest with you,
Can you wrap this up, sir? You're at
yeah, I will. In the borough, taxes are high, and water and sewer bills are high, so adding another cost to the rental situation is gonna drive the cost of everything up. So, we as landlords we're gonna come back for the December meeting and make sure that we stand our ground on that opinion. So, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Jody Perlman. Jody Perlman.
Sorry, where to go?
Hi, I'm Barbara Wells. I'm the property manager for Hillside Heights Apartments here in town. We have 100 units at Hillside, managed by the Goldman Group. We have our inspections every time the property turns over. We've cooperated with the long-term tenants, 5-year inspections. The problem with the cost of an $80 inspection, as everyone else has said, gets passed on to the residents. I have a lot of senior citizens in my apartment community. Their rent going up, their electric going up, forces them to move out. Another $80 a year tacked onto that is going to make a lot of my long-term senior residents who have lived their whole lives in Pottstown and now retired into an apartment community not able to stay here. My other community in West Pottsgrove, we do have an annual inspection. It's $25 per unit a year. These inspections take 10 to 15 minutes. I'm not sure where we came up with $80. That's one of my questions. That just seems exorbitant amount of money for somebody to come in 10, 15 minutes to check the electric and the pump. So we are not totally in favor of the 1-year inspection. Thank you.
Thank you.
William Pascoli. And I hope I didn't butcher that.
I just have one question for the council on the conditional use permit for the funeral home at 1133 High Street. What is the council's course of action if the applicants decide that they actually do have to modify the building from the outside, and they've already testified that there is going to be no modification? If the permit is granted under those circumstances, and then found to be that wasn't truthful, what's the council's course of action?
Sure, the decision of Borough Council, if it grants the conditional use, is simply approving the use. So all the other requirements in the borough ordinance still apply. If the applicant chooses to change the exterior of the building, the applicant will have to come get building permits. That would trigger potentially a whole new conditional use application, because the one prong of the ordinance would not be satisfied based on the modification of the building.
So at that point, it's not revoked?
It could be revoked or suspended, but at this point, I mean, you're talking about speculating what they're doing, and
Absolutely, I mean, and that is the whole question, because the way I see it, there's no way that it cannot be modified to accommodate a casket being removed through either one of those entrances. And, you know, if the applicants have some other information, I'd gladly like to see that, and I'd like that to be presented to the council.
But I think you made that clear at the hearing. The record's closed, so again, I'm not sure that we can really address your comments since it's still under consideration by Borough Council. But
Okay.
Obviously your concern is noted.
Sure, so it wouldn't be, it's not going to be voted on at this meeting?
It could be, but I'm not sure exactly what council is going to do. It's listed on the agenda. But,
Right on the list after.
Thank you. We have 45 days to render this.
Thank you.
Mika Bostic.
Good evening. My name is Mika Bostic. I'm a renter in Pottstown. I moved here about 4 years ago. I don't apologize if I'm out of line, but I wanted to address Mayor Valentine directly. A few years ago, you asked the community to vote you back into office, which we did. And I think we as a community were expecting change. With, again, all due respect, we're not seeing, over the years, Pottstown has diminished in every capacity. I don't even feel safe walking my dogs at night. They have to stay in my yard. If you go a block over to King Street, you see active prostitution going on. So other than what Chief Drumheller said, what other things are you doing to make Pottstown a better community, safer for our children? We don't have fireworks. The Halloween parade was canceled. It just seems like year after year, things are going downhill. So what are some things that you're doing to promote change and to promote Pottstown as a better community? Thank you.
That is the extent of comments from citizens present, sir.
And you are up, Mayor.
I'm up, okay. Well, I would like to begin my report by saying that I did have a conversation with Chief Drumheller today, as I do several times a week as possible. And I knew that this crime issue would be pretty big on the radar, given the recent reports of shots fired, as well as the incident on Saturday night. As far as change is incremental. And maybe you're not aware, but this is my second time serving as mayor. So during the loss of the fireworks was not during my tenure, but I believe that there is now work in progress to raise the necessary funds to have the fireworks and 4th of July activities that people have traditionally enjoyed here. However, whatever the situation was that created the breach that there were no longer fireworks has to do with finances. So we're talking about $100,000 or more for the type of festivities that people are customarily used to having. I'm sure that somebody could do the math to break down the cost per family to attend such an event at $100,000 per event. So all that to say that however we got here, I wasn't sitting in the seat. I'm not laying any charges of liability as to why it did not happen, but there are ongoing efforts especially in the upcoming 200-year anniversary of the incorporation of Pottstown, to have those amenities reinstated. But what is going on is a lot of fundraising. A lot of people are investing time and money to have events to raise the $100,000, and I'm probably minimum in the ballpark, just regarding the 4th of July festivities. So what can I do to make the fireworks come back? I can support those individuals who are raising the funds. Do I have all the funds? Absolutely not. I prefer myself personally to do things with my family that don't cost money and are educational, in lieu of when those other things aren't available. But that's personal. But I do understand that Pottstown has this tradition and that it would be wonderful to restore. So that is in progress. Regarding the crime issue, you know, Chief Drumheller spoke to the issue, the bumping up and reorganization of the force, bringing more people into the community response unit. He's also talked about the enhanced aggressive patrolling that's going to go on around the clock in selected areas. That's already approved. And you mentioned about the break-ins and people prowling around in the homes. You know, we just got through with policing the issue of car break-ins, only to find by camera surveillance of many neighbors that many of the cars were unlocked, that were broken into and reported as being robbed. You know, somebody broke in and stole something. Well, they didn't actually break in if the door was open. So some things are happening by sleight. You know, some people do forget to lock their doors. And some things are happening because there is a growing criminal element out there that's fomented by drug activity. And maybe you weren't here when I returned from the mayor's conference, but that is a global problem in every community, including Mennonite, Amish, you name it. Everybody's dealing with heroin. Every community, every socioeconomic level. You know, so where there's not gangland type shooting happening, there's drug use going on that doesn't have criminal activity attached to it. So how do we police that? How do we police people that choose to do drugs as recreation but don't have crime attached? Is that not crime? If it's hidden and unreported and doesn't result in any bad activity in the neighborhood, it's still a problem. Same thing as trying to bring about change. Where does change really happen? Change really happens in a person's heart. And there are some people that resist change at every juncture. And it doesn't matter what you would try to implement. We're not going to do that. That's not how we're used to doing it. We're not going to do that. That doesn't suit my fancy. We're not going to do that. So you're in a crosshairs of dealing with multiple personalities, multiple cultures, all types of diversity on all types of levels, from ethnicity, religion, you know, where were you born, what did you learn there? So this is the base of what we're dealing with. Does that have anything to do with governance per se? Not really, because the governance part of this is to set the infrastructure for people to live without encroaching on how they live. But now we're at the intersection where how you live brings danger to other people. Now we have the police to invoke the law, and then we have the governance side to tweak the ordinances. I didn't really come prepared to speak on the Better Landlord program, particularly this month, or to make some type of systematic dissection of the value on one side or the other. But I can tell you that behind the scenes in dealing with a lot of landlord-tenant issues one-on-one, that sometimes both sides of the equation are presenting with breaches that cannot be touched, particularly through the codes department or the police department or the governance. And I'll give you one short example, and this has to do with heat. So now we're in the heating season. Last spring, I was approached by some individuals who had a problem over 4 years worth of winters, so I was out of office 4 years, so I guess they waited for me to come back to ask this question. But they didn't have heating oil, working furnace for 4 years. But the landlord brought in space heaters. As a consequence, their bill went up absorbently high, they couldn't afford to pay it, blah, blah. You know, the rest of the story is that they were evicted. But I asked the question about the heater. Was the heater a part of the inspection, and how could the heater not run for 4 years and that not be a reportable problem? Hands off, I can't control what people report, but when it gets to me, I'm going to ask the questions. So what came back was that the heating and ventilation and air conditioning stuff falls under a different type of jurisdiction with the state than with the codes department, which creates a loophole. It creates a loophole where nobody's really responsible. So by bringing the space heaters in, I guess the landlord's saying to the tenant, you have heat. By not fixing the heater, it's saying to us what? Nothing, because we're not in charge of inspecting the heater. You see what I'm saying? There's a loophole there. So you want people on both sides of the equation to be equitable. You want the landlord to be fair to the tenant. You want the tenant to be fair to the landlord. And we do know life is not always fair. And there are some hard case situations out there. And the growing incidence of drug activity is a hard case. And can I tell you today that I have the solution personally to make all that better when nationwide nobody has the solution? If you know somebody that has a problem with addiction, I would say that's the closest arm of outreach. That's the closest arm. If you know someone whose house was broken into, I mean, I don't know these scenarios that you brought up today, but I'll go back and check it out. And you know, if someone's roaming around in someone's house, it must be a police report, right? Yes. Okay. So we'll check it out.
More than one.
Okay. I heard you say 6. I want to also go back and just do a little historical recap and thank those who volunteered from the Hill School for the Pottstown Cares Day and the Pottstown Borough, as well as students from the Pottstown High School. And I can remember during the first term setting the seed for this type of day through the Mayor's Initiative on Neighborhoods, where we actually did do a lot of street cleaning and detailing, and I was also able to secure help from individuals who were on work release for the county on several different weekends, and I supervised those individuals myself on Saturdays and Sundays for 6 hours over 6 weeks period during the summer. So thanks to the Hill School and Pottstown Cares for taking it to the next dimension, and also that it serves as a springboard for residents to do the same thing all the time. It's not like a luxury service where somebody comes and cleans the streets. And I think that's one of the perceptions that's out there, based on some of the calls I got for half of my street was done, the other half wasn't done. Wasn't that an impetus for you to do the other half if somebody did one half for you? That was my comment. You can relate to what I'm saying? Thank you. That's the end of my report.
Any questions for the mayor? Okay, manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Troney. I want to let council know that one of the capital items on the police budget was the mobile data terminal, or mobile data computers, I believe 17 units. The current units in the police cars have an operating system that has been outdated and is no longer supported by Microsoft, and earlier this year the police department received notice that the state would no longer allow them on the state network because of the ancient software. Ancient is a strange term nowadays, but nonetheless, we thought we had time to get into 2015. However, the state put the chief on notice that as of January 1st, if the problem's not corrected, his units are off the system. Made the decision after consulting with the finance committee to allow that purchase to go forward now. It will be deducted from the capital expenses of next year. Just want council to be aware of that. Also want council to be aware that we have completed, or we are just about done installing global position systems, GPS, on all of our borough vehicles. They've been in the police vehicles for many years. They are now on all borough vehicles, and interestingly, during the trial period, we determined that most likely the savings we're going to see in fuel will more than pay for the units going forward. And one of the features that I find interesting is that the system alerts you when there's a problem with the vehicle before you know there's a problem. No sooner were the systems installed, but we got an alert on one of our dump trucks that the brakes were about to fail on one of the rear axles. So I thought that was interesting because we had no warning of that prior to the system being installed. Like I think some councils are aware of it, bringing you up to speed, that Tompkins Insurance, Tompkins Vist, had their grand opening at 258 East High Street last week. I believe the banking end of the adventure will follow sometime in the near future. Some of the money that was used for that process was Erica, the name of the program, please?
Downtown Business Incentive.
The Downtown Business Incentive, which is funded through the borough. Last but not, or one of the last items I have, as you recall, the County Planning Commission is working on the sustainability plan for Pottstown. We are presently in the process of establishing a stakeholder committee for the development of that plan. I would ask that each of you consider the name of at least one person in your ward that you would recommend to sit on the stakeholders committee, and get that name to me so that we can add them to the list. In honor of Veterans Day, please remember that Borough Hall is closed for business tomorrow. And last but not least, I believe Erica has some news to share about Walk Bike Pottstown.
Sure. Okay, you're all aware of Walk Bike Pottstown. The school district and the borough have been partnering on this initiative for the past few years. It's gained a lot of traction thanks to Act 89. Act 89 has provided a transportation alternatives program, and we were awarded for really phase 1 and phase 2 of the proposal. Phase 1 and phase 2 were the actual bike lanes that are involved with the scope of the project, and the signalization, a lot of different work that is the network of the borough, so it's about 9 miles of work. But what's in addition to that for the pedestrians was a sidewalk component. And when we had met originally with DVRPC, they had recommended on the pot of money that DVRPC gets versus the state, that they would take that sidewalk portion, take it to the state, because it seemed a little more competitive for us to get the first phase 1 and phase 2. Well, it seemed to work out, because phase 1 and phase 2 got funded a few months ago for that $1 million grant award. And we were recently received a press release that $300,000 for the sidewalk improvements were awarded Pottstown today. So we have $1.3 million for the implementation now of the construction, and then we're still proceeding with the design and all the soft costs with the Health and Wellness Foundation, which is $582,000. So Pottstown really has some good funding here for these bike head improvements, so we're just looking forward to future news. And we had our first field meeting on Jackson Street, and it's very interesting. We have some interesting project here to move forward with, but just want to announce that we received that notice. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's the extent of it.
Any questions for our borough manager?
I just have one question. The GPS on all borough vehicles, what was the cost?
Doug, the cost for the GPS?
The units themselves came to about $20,000.
And then there was a cost for installation?
And the monthly fee.
There's a monthly fee that is
$27 a unit.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we're up to the committee reports. Libraries, anyone here from the library? Human Relations, Mayor, any updates? Benita, Sheila, I did see Sheila.
Yes. Very quickly, you had already spoken about Tompkins. We welcomed them in last week at their grand opening. I want to take a moment to thank all the CARES people. The trailer that the Christmas decorations and 20 years worth of stuff has been cleaned out, and thank you to the CARES people for that, because that was a huge undertaking
that I've been trying to do for 4 years, and it was accomplished through CARES. And one last thing, with the holidays coming up, we hope that you'll support the free parking initiative that we requested. And if everyone in this room can understand that buying local this holiday season, $100 of every person that buys locally can initiate $10 million into local economies. So it is a really important thing. We have enough things in downtown between restaurants, Steel River, the Art Gallery, and a few of the shops that simply $100 can be easily spent. And if you do that, get your raffle first, because that's a fundraiser for Pavita. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? COG, Councilor Cole?
COG is tomorrow night.
Is there a chance that we can get some of the minutes from the COG meetings?
There, I had talked to Spencer Claypool, he's supposed to be sending them in.
Are we getting them?
You get them? I'll talk to him again.
EAC, Jim Durst. Okay.
Can I make a recommendation for the AC? Are they privy to see the report of the land survey of the Bethel Church? You know, they were denied the access to build their church on the property because of the reports.
If the report was made public, it was done as a private venture, it wasn't a public venture. But if the report were to be made public, then they could certainly say it, sure.
So is that something they can request?
Sure.
Can we make that request of you, please?
Thanks. Regional planning, Councilor Proxel, I was not at the meeting. You were, anything?
At first, we had a presentation from Brian O'Leary from Montgomery County, and it was mostly kind of business as usual, except for the last 5 minutes, and somebody had suggested maybe creating a position of, I guess, kind of like a Steve Bann for the region, as far as getting businesses in, things like that. That's it.
Good. Okay, blighted property review, Councilor William?
Yeah, there was no meeting, but we will be holding one in November.
Okay. No unfinished business, new business. So we have a presentation by Mr. Hilton on FlexiPay.
Okay, in September, as you know, Council requested the Montgomery County Planning Commission to do a sustainability plan for Pottstown, which Mr. Flinders mentioned earlier this evening. And you recall back in February, Council gave its blessings to Simone Collins, Landscape Architects, doing a no-cost, no-obligation green stormwater infrastructure plan for Pottstown, which they are working on. And as part of that green infrastructure study, The University of Vermont was contracted to do a surface, land use surface plan for Pottstown. And as you can see from this map, about 24% of Pottstown is covered by tree canopy in the summer, and 35% is grass and shrubs. 14% is buildings, and 24% is impervious surface, either roads or parking lots. And the key component of any green infrastructure plan is trying to remove as much impervious surface as possible. Either remove it, or in the case of building rooftops, to put green on top of the rooftops to absorb stormwater. So here's the borough of Pottstown as shown by Google Earth. And we went on Google Earth and we actually measured all the sidewalks in Pottstown, the length of the sidewalk, block to block, and the width, and came up with the figure of 3.3 million square feet of sidewalk. That's a lot of sidewalk we have in Pottstown, 3.3 million square feet. Now, PennDOT standard is to have a 5-foot wide sidewalk, which you can see on the right. That's a fairly recent sidewalk put in by the Hill School. However, they'll allow a 4-foot sidewalk if every 200 feet you have a 5x5 section. That's ADA requirement for wheelchairs to get past each other. So on the left, you can see a 4-foot sidewalk along Memorial Park, and I've just superimposed a 5x5 block. However,
we all agree, crime is unacceptable. Violent crime, completely unacceptable. I wish that we had an answer as to how we could completely and totally eradicate it. I don't know that we'll ever be able to do that. What I can tell you is, I don't mean to speak for everyone, but I'm pretty sure that everyone feels the same as I do about this issue. We'll do everything we can. And we have, we've talked about this in the safety committee meeting immediately before council. I think the chief understands. He certainly has a safety committee, and I believe the entire council's full support in bringing whatever resources are necessary to bear to catch people that commit these offenses. And I mean, the one thing that I can do that I tell you that I will do is when those people are caught, I will make sure the district attorney of the county knows that, in my opinion, at least, those individuals should be prosecuted to the fullest extent possible. One way to eradicate crime is when we catch people, to make sure that we do everything we can to punish them. And I will tell you we will do that. I can tell you, you heard the chief say, he is restructuring the police department. He is going to make sure that he has all the manpower he needs on the job. We as a council have fully staffed the police department, you're certainly invited to attend safety committee meetings if you have any suggestions. All I can say is you are absolutely right. That is unacceptable, and we will do what we can to stop the scourge of crime and to punish those that believe, I think mistakenly, that they can come into the borough of Pottstown and get away with this.
Thank you.
Mr. William? Nothing further. Mr. Gary pretty much summed it up for me as well. I live a block and a half from I walk my dog about 3 hours before that happened in the same area. I have faith in our chief and our police department. Work hard to make sure we can
I do think it's important that we do invest in our property maintenance, in our police department, in L&I. I think that will really make great strides into solving some of these problems before they happen. I wanted to kind of ask the mayor something to see if there is a way to close the loophole on heating systems as far as inspections for rental properties. Is that something we can do as an L&I department? I had a very just stressful call from a young lady this afternoon who has 5 children and has been out of heat since Saturday.
Heat is a big problem already all over. And the same type of breaches and with landlords bringing in space heaters, not fixing heating elements. And since it is a state issue, I would say I would refer it to the
being, who do I?
I'm sure there's going to be some help utilizing this. It's not, it's becoming a safety issue.
It's the only knowledge that I have as far as an enforcement authority, and it's not a solution that I like, and that is that if the home is, if it's in the time of winter and the home is unheated, it's therefore uninhabitable. The problem is, exactly, the tenant ends up losing. So.
But it's losing on all sides.
Right.
With no equitable chip at the table to say to the landlord.
That you have to do something.
Exactly.
Let's get back to Council Miller after I talk to Mr. Place and the other inspectors and see what we can do.
Mayor.
You know, a lot of our issues are quality of life issues because of joblessness, drugs, and poverty. And it gets down into the value base and other ideological issues that people find me to be heavy on. But there's the base of the solutions. That's really the base of the solutions. How do you reposition people who are not accustomed so much to living safely because their mind's been altered by chemical substances to do the right thing? It's tough. And I personally, I walk around at night different places. I don't choose to go into places that are particularly dangerous, but you never know where danger is in the society today. It can be anywhere at a moment's notice or without notice. So I just don't tend to encourage fear-mongering. I tend to encourage people to be confident and be safe, not to be unwise, but not to just completely abandon to fear on every point. That's not good for children either. I also have children and grandchildren, so it's not that it's a foreign topic to me of understanding. And yes, there are some things that I do in triaging with the community, but it's more one-on-one. I don't find this to be something that is a magic bullet hit and everything's solved. When there's particular instances that I can step into safely, I do. And that's what I'll continue to do. And I believe that's why I'm sitting here. That's it.
Chief Drumheller, last year at this time, what was our officer number?
Last year at this time, we were down 15 officers.
And we are at now, what?
We have 2 yet out on light duty, but we were back to 4. We anticipate being in full strength in about another month and a half.
So we are definitely doing what we can to increase, police on the street. Before we had to have officers, working extra overtime, and that certainly is not a good, thing because we burn those guys out. But, we're back up now to a full complement, so we should really start seeing some big differences. But there again, too, people are going to do what they're going to do. Okay, we have an executive session.
Yeah, 3 items of personnel and 1 judicial deliberation. No action.
Okay, motion for adjournment?
We have a lot of sidewalks that are far wider than that. We probably have about 600,000 square feet of excess sidewalk in Pottstown, nearly 20% more than we really need. And from a green infrastructure standpoint, ripping up that excess asphalt and putting in water-absorbing plants is a big way that you can reduce stormwater runoff by absorbing the stormwater where it falls. This is at Randmore Avenue. A lot of places where people have voluntarily just put in very beautiful plants that are also absorbing stormwater. On the left, you see the city of Chicago, which has a very big stormwater management program. And on the right, you see New York City just removing excess sidewalk and putting water-absorbing plants. And of course, trees are another big way to absorb stormwater. This is a densely populated street in Brooklyn, a very common site in New York where they have more than 600,000 street trees. Now, as you know, trees lift sidewalks, particularly concrete slabs, but it's not just trees. Concrete slabs become very uneven for a lot of different reasons, freezing and thawing of ground settlement, and so forth. And concrete also can spall, and we have a lot of very deficient sidewalks in Pottstown. I wouldn't be surprised if a third of all the sidewalks, maybe a million square feet, are not code compliant. Starting 2 years ago, the borough started issuing violation notices to property owners for non-code compliant sidewalks, and this is just a little map showing you where people have been cited. 719 initial violation notices. I went out and looked. 23% are tree-related, which means, of course, that 3/4 are not tree-related. And as you can also see just by looking at this map, we've only started to scratch the surface of sidewalk remediation in Pottstown. As you know, in the 80s, Trees Incorporated raised a lot of money and planted a lot of street trees. We now have more than 3,000 trees, and using the iTree program developed by the U.S. Forest Service, those trees have an annual value of more than $300,000 a year. That's lowering energy consumption by cooling the air in the summer, carbon dioxide absorption, stormwater management, absorbing stormwater, and property values. Pottstown has not planted any trees, new trees for more than 10 years. Meanwhile, Norristown and Phoenixville have planted about 1,300 street trees in that period. We haven't planted any replacement trees either in recent years. We do have 102 dead trees in Pottstown right now, and we have 218 stumps or empty wells where trees once existed and have been removed. And then we also have a very big deficit in trimming trees, and Trees Incorporated is going to try and do, we've identified about 1,800 trees that ought to be trimmed. We're going to try and do as many as we can over the winter period. I'm not sure how many we can do. I'm guessing it would be anywhere between $120,000 and $250,000 just to trim all those trees. Now, trees, as you know, are shallow rooted, which is why they tend to cause sidewalk damage. With a green infrastructure program, a big way to alleviate damage is just to remove the excess concrete. And this sidewalk is 5.5 feet wide. That's more than PennDOT standard. So if you remove the other 6 feet, you'd be absorbing stormwater, and you wouldn't have to replace it with impervious surface. And people are starting to do that as they're replacing sidewalks. They're leaving a green strip there to absorb stormwater. ADA standards say that you only need 3 feet around a tree or a pole or other obstruction. Trees Incorporated started remediating sidewalks a number of years ago. We've done 417 trees at a cost of more than $100,000. This is an example from High Street. Jackhammer out the concrete. You put in asphalt, cover it with an epoxy coating. The least expensive way, if the sidewalk isn't lifted that much, you can bevel down the edge of the concrete. We've done 291 of those, bringing these special saws, and they just cut down the edge of the concrete, remove the trip hazard. This is ADA compliant. But in many, many cases, you've got to just remove the concrete because it's so lifted up. And we've done more than 100 of those. Jackhammer out the concrete. Then you put down asphalt, which council a couple of years ago passed an ordinance allowing asphalt around trees. Putting down the asphalt, tamping it down, and then coating it with epoxy. This is the same epoxy they use in New York City for their bike lanes. And so these were a number of sidewalks we did initially on Walnut Street. We've done many more since then. Now here's a very badly lifted sidewalk on Wilson Street. And thanks to using asphalt, which is flexible, we went right over. We didn't even have to touch the roots. The roots are just exactly the way they were before we put down the new sidewalk. And it's seamless and very smooth. Blends in well. This is probably the worst lifted sidewalk in Pottstown. This is Mike Wenzel. You know, he used to be a councilman. And we took out that concrete, found it really wasn't much of a lifted a root above surface. So it was rather easy to go over with asphalt. And then on the right, you can see it's been coated with epoxy. That's problem solved. However, there is a limitation in asphalt in saying, well, you can only use 14 feet around a tree. Here's a property owner. You can see in the back, you can see the sidewalk's been lifted. In the front, it's just totally deteriorated. So we replaced the sidewalk with asphalt. You see that in the foreground. But then Public Works said, no, you can't keep that asphalt going on the front of your house, which is what he wanted to do. So in the front of the house, he had to get a separate contractor to put in concrete. So it's a combination. Concrete is just not compatible with tree roots. I think it's a very poor service for sidewalks, period, because it cracks, it's rigid, and it lifts up. Whereas, so here you can have a perfect piece of concrete, but if it's lifted up, it's not really serving the purpose. Whereas when you have freezing and thawing and you have other conditions, you create tripping hazards because it's simply rigid, it's not flexible. So then you have to jackhammer it out, you put in new concrete, and then the next thing you know, a few years later, it's cracked, it's lifted again, and people blame it on the trees. The tree is doing what a tree is going to do. We need to be more intelligent about what walking surface we're going to put around trees. Now, Longwood Gardens, it has nothing but asphalt on all its walking paths because it's flexible. And if you have to fix a piece of asphalt, it's much cheaper than jackhammering out concrete. You just cut a little piece out and replace it. And it's flexible. You can actually go around trees, as you can see with asphalt. And asphalt is very common all across the world as walking surfaces. This is the Schuylkill River Greenway. This is the quad at the Hill School asphalt. This is the quadrangle at Bryn Mawr College near Villanova. Harvard Yard, asphalt sidewalk. Princeton University. Princeton Borough has a lot of asphalt sidewalks. Bryn Athyn Borough here in Montgomery County, very wealthy borough, asphalt sidewalks. A lot in New England. This is Marblehead, Massachusetts, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Montpelier, the capital of Vermont. England has a lot of asphalt sidewalks. France does. You can see in this particular scene, you can see a pedestrian walkway, bike lanes, and cars. Everything's asphalt. Paris, asphalt. Asphalt holds up fine just in very hot weather. This is Disney World in Orlando, and you can see millions of people are walking up and down an asphalt street every year. And then this is one of the coldest towns in the world, Ola, Finland, up near the Arctic Circle, where actually they have 40% of trips are made in Ola by walking or riding a bicycle, and it's all asphalt. Either they're on a bike or they're walking. This is Upper Euclid Township in Chester County, which got state and federal funding to put in asphalt sidewalks. Asphalt is a PennDOT approved for sidewalks. It is ironic that we spent more than $1 million putting in handicapped ramps for our sidewalks, and then you see so many people who are on motors or on scooters, or they're on wheelchairs, or they're walkers, and they're going down the street. And they're not using the sidewalks because the sidewalks are so lifted and they're so deteriorated, whereas here you have a seamless surface. So it just seems to make sense to consider asphalt for sidewalks just generally, around trees, but also generally. Okay, and asphalt can, it's typically black, but it can be any color with an epoxy coating. This is New Brunswick, Maine. It's a sort of a clay-colored asphalt. And this is New York City. This is the epoxy we use in Pottstown. They can do designs. This is their bike lanes. They use the green for the bike lanes and the brown for pedestrian areas for standing. Now, the other thing that we've started recently with permission of council is to do a FlexiPave or a porous pavement. As far as I know, there are two products and they're almost identical. One's called FlexiPave, one's called Porous Pave. And these products are ground up stone and ground up tires. And then they're bound together with a binder. So what you do, I first learned about this I was told about it, and then I went down to see it in Washington, because Washington, D.C. has let me go backwards here. Washington, D.C. has, I can't seem to make it go backwards. Washington, D.C. has 150,000 square feet of FlexiPave, and I have an email which I'll share with the borough manager, and he can share with you from their Department of Transportation. In Washington, the city does the trees, they do the sidewalks, and they do the streets. And so they have city foresters who work for the Department of Transportation, and they've started using FlexiPave to protect trees. This is a very highly trafficked pedestrian area of Washington. 8th Street Southwest, and this is the Flexipave. And they have a color that kind of matches the brick that's already there, high pedestrian traffic. And they can put Flexipave right up to the tree trunk. As the trees grow, it just compacts the Flexipave. It just moves right out into this substance. And they're using it increasingly for ADA compliance. I mean, this is a tree that normally would have to be removed. But because they can put Flexipave right up to the trunk, they still have enough room for ADA compliance. You can see it with the Flexipave going right up to the tree trunk. And they can also ramp over tree trunks. You can have a certain pitch and still be ADA compliant. I've just highlighted how much this is pitched. But this is Rhode Island Avenue. This is about 3 blocks away from the Capitol where they passed the ADA law, so it's definitely compliant. And now Washington's starting to put it in for new tree plantings as well. Because it's porous, it allows the water to run right through that sidewalk surface and feed the tree roots, make it much less likely that the roots are going to come up and lift anything. Now this is how it's done. This is North Hanover Street. They have bags of ground up stone, and then they have bags of ground up rubber tires in little flecks, and then they put them in a mixer. And then you can see these 5-gallon containers. That's the binder, and they pour in some binder and they mix it all together. They pour it out into wheelbarrows. Now here on the left you can see with a guy with a brush, and he's brushing the binder to the side of the bricks so that the Flexipave will stick to the bricks. And you can see there's a stone base. It's the same stone base you would use if you were putting in a concrete or an asphalt sidewalk. And then you can see on the right, they're pouring the Flexipave down, and then they just trowel it out, and they're done. And it sets in about 4 hours. They like to say it's totally set overnight and good to walk on. It's rather easy to install, and this is the finished product. And these are some that we've done. As this tree's going to grow, it's just going to push the Flexipave back. And these are just some that are lifted and repaired with this porous pavement of Flexipave. On Hanover Street, we did 17 of them. Onondaga County, which is where the city of Syracuse is located, Syracuse, New York, they have one of the nation's biggest green infrastructure programs. They're working with the University of Syracuse. They've done more than 50 projects for green infrastructure, and some of them involve porous pavement. They've used a number of different products, but the guy from the University of Syracuse told me he really likes Flexipave, sent me an email that I'll send on to Mr. Flanders, and he can send on to you. They've been using it for 5 or 6 years. It holds up very well. Of course, it gets very cold in Syracuse. This is a letter I got from the city engineer in Rome, New York. Rome is on the southern edge of the Adirondack Mountains. Gets more than 150 inches of snow every year. Gets very, very cold in the winter. They've been using Flexipave since 2006. They have 360,000 square feet of Flexipave, and they found that it holds up very well. Cold weather, warm weather, for a period of years. And they actually even use it for stormwater management as far as draining water away from buildings. You can see the drain pipe that's going into the Flexipave, and then they put in a French drain to drain the water away from the building. So Trees Incorporated is hoping that in cooperation with the borough over the next several years, that we could remediate all the tree-related sidewalk damage in Pottstown, either by beveling, or by replacing the concrete with either asphalt, which we're guessing would be probably about $9 a square foot based on our experience, or with porous pavement, which we're guessing is going to be $12 to $14 a square foot. That all depends on, when we do a little bit more of it, we'll get a better idea of how much it costs. Now, we've got 50,000 square feet of tree-related sidewalk damage in Pottstown. That's just 1.5% of all the sidewalks in Pottstown, 50,000 square feet. And so that's what we're hoping we can do with Flexipave or porous pavement. Porous pave, maybe $600,000 to $750,000. But if we're looking for grant money, porous pavement would be the way to go, because porous is very, very on the radar screen for the DEP, the EPA. It's very green because it absorbs stormwater right on the spot. It doesn't run off somewhere else. which is why they're using it in the District of Columbia, which has a green infrastructure program. New York City has a green infrastructure program. Philadelphia has what's considered to be the biggest one in the country, removing a lot of impervious surface and putting in plants to absorb stormwater. Lancaster has probably the most comprehensive in the state of Pennsylvania. They've got millions of dollars in grants from the DEP, the EPA, PennVest, and I think this would open up opportunities for us to get grant money, particularly if we're going to use some sort of porous pavement. And the William Penn Foundation, in addition to that, which is our Southeastern Pennsylvania major foundation, giving away millions of dollars, and their top priority is watershed protection, which means water cleaning, which porous pavement does. It cleans the water. It also makes sure that the water is absorbed right where it is. So what we're asking is for council to amend the ordinance to permit the use of asphalt, permitted by PennDOT, for sidewalks and not limit the amount of length, and also to amend the ordinance to permit the use of porous pavement, also no limitation on length. Now the limitation on porous pavement is it's really, really expensive, so if you're not getting a grant, it's not likely you'll use it. But if we do get these ordinance amendments, then it would put us in a good position to go forward with a sustainability plan to see if we can get some serious state interest in funding this. Thank you very much.
We'll pass this on to our codes and infrastructure for their discussion. Okay, we're up to B. I'm going to ask council for a motion to table this motion till next month.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, letter C, motion on appeal of Martha Parry, 7th West 4th Street for handicapped parking space application.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved to approve. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to authorize the advertisement of the 2015 budget with the total revenues of $54,873 and $975. With the total expenditures, of $44,873,975, dated November 5th, 2014. Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, I just want to explain the reason I'm voting no on this budget. I'm not voting no to a 0% tax increase. I'm voting no because in this budget, we lose the clean and lean team. These men have a commitment to our community and are another set of eyes and ears to identify problems and issues at a time when we need it the most. I think the cost of outsourcing this role will be much greater than dollars and cents.
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Vice President Geary? Aye. Counselor Kirkland?
Aye.
Counselor Culp? Aye. Counselor Miller?
No.
Counselor Proxel?
No.
Counselor Wien?
Yes.
President Turney?
Yes.
Motion carried, 5 ayes, 2 nays.
Okay, motion to authorize advertisement of an ordinance to fix the borough tax rate for real property for the year 2015 with total millage not to exceed 10.311 mils.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please, on this.
Vice President Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Kirkland?
Yes.
Counselor Culp?
Aye.
Counselor Miller?
Yes.
Counselor Proxel?
Yes.
Counselor Wien?
Yes.
President Turney?
Yes.
Motion
Motion carries 7 yes.
Okay, motion to approve and authorize execution of the Borough of Pottstown fund balance policy for establishing Capital Fund 31.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to approve and authorize one-time override expenditures in the Parks and Rec Fund in the amount of $19,000 and in the General Fund for Police Licensing and Inspections and Public Works Fund in the amount of $40,000 as outlined in the 2015 capital budget dated November 4th, 2014.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to authorize the Montgomery County Tax Claim Bureau to collect the delinquent real estate taxes for the Borough of Pottstown for the calendar year 2015.
Moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to award the Public Works Facilities construction bid to ER Studner Incorporated in Norristown, Pennsylvania in the amount of $4,074,000, subject to review and approval of the Borough Manager, Borough Solicitor, and the Public Works Director.
So moved.
I would, like to bring up, this is about the municipal.
Yeah, we have a motion.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, now, it moved and seconded. Now discussion.
I was wondering if maybe we could table this and just take a second another look at this. I stopped. I was a little surprised at what the amount came out to do this. I never thought it was going to be that high. So I stopped in at Limerick and looked at their municipal building, and I just thought maybe it would be a good idea if we would just maybe table this for a month and take a look at theirs and just compare the two and see if maybe we can, maybe there's a possibility we could save some money. I don't know. I don't know if anybody would want to go along with this.
Well, I know I've been waiting 6 years. Steve, you've been waiting 16. And in light of the fact that I got the cost, I'd certainly like to have that month. To get out and look at it myself and compare. If we have an opportunity to put up our building at $1 million less, I'm obligated as a finance chair to take a look at it.
One of the things, though, just to bring some facts to the table, our facility is actually 23,000 square feet, not 14. So that's in comparison to Limerick.
Okay.
Some of the stuff that Limerick is doing certainly is not at all compared to what we're doing. I mean, they're basically building a box, whereas we're putting in office space, we're putting in lunchroom areas, we're putting in bathrooms. A lot of our garages are heated, so you're not comparing apples and oranges in comparing what we're doing and what they're doing. And certainly, it was a bid. It was advertised. Certainly, we had 3 responsible bidders. And, in my opinion, I think they were fairly close. The process has been transparent the entire way that along. And this has been not just the last couple of months. This has been over 2.5 months that we've been going through. And this has come before council. And I guess I'm just a little concerned that at the 11th hour that we now have concerns over what we're spending when we knew what we were going to spend on this. This went through finance. We loaned money to cover the expenses. To meet those costs that were given to us by our architect and project manager on this project. So to me, I think it would be foolish, certainly in waiting, because I don't understand what would be accomplished. I mean, certainly we'd have to toss out the bids and rebid it, and it would start the process all over again.
In my experience of 23 years in architectural design and going through the process of bidding and awarding projects and seeing projects like this. This is a really good bid for this type of project. So.
Some of the other things too that were included in our work as far as costs were the site work. Limerick did their own site work, and they already had some of the infrastructure on place. We're starting with a vacant piece of property, and whereas Limerick, some of their infrastructure was already in place. Some of the site work is being done by their work crews and so forth, installing the water and sewer lines, and also some of the work, interior work, is being done by their workers and so forth. And once again, I just want to add that we're not comparing apples and apples here. So we have a motion on the floor.
Can I ask, and I don't know if this was something that you or Mark or the solicitor could address, but if we just tabled it for a month, would that would not require us to throw out the bids and rebid it, would it?
No, if you recall, Mr. Geary, the bids were open October 7th. Bid documents allow the borough up to 60 days to award the bid, unless the contractor is willing to extend the bid for an additional time. 60 days would take us until December the 6th, which would allow council to act if you choose to do that at the committee of the whole meeting in December, which would be December 3rd. But that would be really the last occasion you could act under this bid unless the contractor agreed to extend the time for the bid approval. So you are running up to a deadline as of December 6th, in absence of cooperation.
I mean, I guess my feeling is, we're voting on $4 million in expenditures. If we really don't lose anything other than the time, Councilor Culp, Councilor Bean expressed at least some concern and would like additional time to get additional information to address the merits of the proposal we have in front of us. I don't see the harm in doing it.
No, I'm not changing my mind on this project at all. But I'm willing to make a new decision if we find out when we compare these oranges and apples that the differences are not worth the difference in the cost. And if we have the time to do so, I think we owe it to our people to make that study, investigate it, and make sure we're getting the absolute best deal for the dollars we're putting down.
Well, the only way that would change is if we would rebid the project, cut some of the items that are out there. And as far as all through this project, I think, this is basically a bare bone. I mean, there's nothing like there's Cadillac parts that are going into this project.
Well,
our, resident architect certainly kept his eye on things we'll be doing, and certainly at no point did Joe ever say, gee, we really, we're spending more money on this than we should be. It was transparent, following through with what we're doing here, and I'm just concerned that if we lose traction on this now, it certainly is not going to be advantageous, and I don't think the outcome is going to be any different.
I don't see a downside to it. Other than we put
You, as the chairman of this project, gave it its blessing at our last finance meeting.
I did, and I am not changing my mind on the project. I am willing to look at new evidence and make a new decision.
But some of the evidence that was presented to us as far as it's not true.
That's what I need to find out.
Well, I just gave it to you.
Yeah. We'll go down and see this building, what's different between ours and theirs.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. At this point, we'll have to vote up or down on this motion, and then we have a request for a table in this motion.
I understand, all the concerns, but I'm telling you, you're with this project.
Roll call, please.
Vice President Geary?
No.
Councilor Kirkland?
I want to make sure I know what I'm voting to. What am I voting to?
The motion was to approve it.
The motion is to award the bid to Stubner, who is the apparent.
Okay, yes.
Councilor Culp?
No.
Councilor Miller?
No.
Councilor Proxel?
No.
Councilor Wien?
No.
President Train,
Yes.
motion denied, 2 ayes, 5.
So at this point, do we have a recommendation what the staff is supposed to do?
Okay, I would like staff to bring us a list of differences in the projects.
And just a comparison, I mean, the project that Councilor Culp raised, we can just get a comparison, so we know it really is apples to oranges as opposed to apples to apples.
Well, I'll make sure everyone gets a copy of this because our borough manager already did that. And here's a comparison right here that I just read, so I don't understand what's going to be changing.
We want to see the comparisons and the contrasts. What is it they did that we don't, or they didn't have to pay for it, we will? What amenities are we buying that they're not?
Our facility is actually 23,000 square feet. Their facility is 22,000. We have 2,700 square feet of office space, and all the rest is garage. Our facility will accommodate 16 staff, streets, water distribution, sewer collection, vehicle maintenance, repair, and the electrician. Limerick's will house Public Works and their Parks and Rec department. Limerick facility is a prefab box with a small second floor mezzanine for storage and some bunks for sleeping during storm events. Everything else is in a common area. Limerick performed their own site work, installed water and sewer lines, and did much of the interior work. We are not performing any of those tasks. They've had their own salt shed for years, so that's not included in their price, where ours is included in the price. So if you feel that you need to go down on your own and look at this project and see what they're doing. And
Ours is a total complete facility, total complete facility.
I'll make sure every counselor gets a copy of this. Okay, letter J, motion to approve a 3-year professional service agreement between Huff Associates and the Borough of Pottstown to collect the 2014, 2015, and 2016 recycling data and prepare Pennsylvania DEP 904 recycling grant applications.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to approve and authorize execution of a 1-year lease agreement between the Borough of Pottstown and Fly Elite LLC for the operation of Pottstown Municipal Airport, subject to review of the Assistant Borough Manager and Borough Solicitor.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to grant the request of Bose Development Group for an extension until May 11th, 2015 to satisfy the conditions of the plan approval of the Family Dollar Store Land Development Plan, 399 Farmington Avenue.
Moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
The only thing holding this up is the PennDOT.
Yes, and we did receive a letter from the applicant formally requesting that rather than 90 days, they asked to May 11th, which is our May meeting. They indicated that they may break ground sooner, but clearly they probably wouldn't break ground in the middle of winter. A 90-day extension would have taken them only to February 11th, and at that point they didn't feel it was appropriate to start undertaking any construction efforts. Just a point of clarification, they are awaiting a PennDOT permit. In fairness to PennDOT, because I think we had the impression that PennDOT was just sitting on something, they had to secure some easements from some neighboring property owners in order to include that in the PennDOT submission. We just received those easement agreements, so it's not like it's been sitting on PennDOT's desk for 6 months. So now with everything in hand, they're going to submit, and they appreciate the borough's willingness to go to bat to help them secure the PennDOT approval if needed, but they'll come back to us if they need that. So again, I just wanted to make clear that it wasn't a PennDOT issue, it was actually an issue outside the control of the applicant to secure the easements. So
That may be the first time I've heard anyone preface comments with, in fairness to PennDOT. I've tried to be correct.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Motion to adopt an ordinance amending and creating new sections of the sanitary sewer disposal ordinance to address termination of water services.
Moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to authorize the solicitor and staff to prepare a policy for volunteer services at the animal kennel location at the wastewater treatment plant as recommended by the ad hoc animal ordinance review committee.
Moved.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to ratify the mayor's disciplinary action of suspension upon a Pottstown police officer.
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to grant the request of the Pottstown Downtown Improvement District Authority for, excuse me, special holiday parking subject to approval of the Pottstown Police Department.
Moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Motion to award the 2015 chemical bids as follows, and is set forth in the October 30th, 2014 bid tabulation and subject to the approval of the solicitor. Powder activated carbon to Univar for 1 year, ortho polyphosphate to Shannon Chemical for 1 year, and Green Clean Pro to Univar for 1 year.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Motion to award diesel low fuel for buses, fuel bid to Automotive Services, Reading, Pennsylvania for a 3-year contract as set forth in the bid tabulation of October 30th, 2014, subject to review of the Borough Solicitor.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Is that the one that's on, it says Reading, PA here, but there's an Automotive Services, wasn't it on High Street up in Stowe? Or was that something different?
It's the same,
Yeah.
same business, it's owned by Reading.
Yeah, they are.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Motion to authorize the solicitor to send a letter to the zoning hearing board in support of the zoning relief requested by Sean Folkerts, Nancy Folkerts, and S&M Ventures LLC for property located at 81 South Charlotte Street.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the property located at 455 King Street as recommended by Harb.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to ratify the action of the building permit officers approving certificates of appropriateness for the following properties: 272 Walnut Street, 250 Walnut Street, 254 Walnut Street, 935 East High Street, 643 East High Street, 911, 913 High Street, 157 North Hanover Street.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And add on, I'm looking for a motion for a resolution by the Burgess and Town Council of the Borough of Pottstown authorizing the supplemental reimbursement agreement for final design phase cost for the Pottstown area closed loop signal system.
You know, on more than one occasion, council has approved a reimbursement agreement with PennDOT. What they're asking you to do is basically based on the change in the PennDOT contribution to the design. Originally, it was 1.386 million, is now 1.516 million. They're just asking you to approve the agreement with that revised amount. That's, again, their contribution to the project.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Report of the bills, please.
Motion to approve the bills in the amount of $3,693,406.39.
Move.
Been moved, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Announcements, Council Clerk.
Just not happy, but just want all the residents to remember Veterans Day. All the veterans that gave their life for.
Thank you. Council Perry.
Thank you. Cindy's already left,